Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you guys with the most up-to-date political, economic and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in.
Okay, happy Monday everybody. My apologies in advance. I'm recovering from a minor cold and my throat is still a little bit inflamed, so my voice may sound a little bit different today than usual, but should be on the mend in the next few days. China continues to battle stubborn and sporadic outbreaks of Omicron across the country, raising fears that more damaging lockdowns may be on the way. China reported an uptick in COVID-19 cases on Sunday, yesterday, as the capital saw a resurgence in infections. The outbreak in the province of Inner Mongolia, which borders the country of Mongolia, has grown into a new COVID epicenter as well. In Beijing, the capital, a cluster of cases traced back to a bar on Thursday has now spread to 14 of the city's 16 districts. One Beijing municipal government official described this particular cluster as ferocious and explosive at a press conference event yesterday. The wealthy district of Chaoyang, population 3.5 million, has also entered 3 days of mass testing again, starting today, Monday. Many businesses, especially entertainment venues, have been closed once again. School pupils will continue remote learning in the capital, except for those in 9th grade. We remember that while China's infection rate is low by global standards, China continues to maintain a zero COVID policy, which means that even a few cases can result in a massive and highly expensive and disruptive state response, including the lockdown of millions. Meanwhile, in Shanghai over the weekend, authorities ordered PCR testing of all residents in 15 of Shanghai's 16 districts, with 5 districts barring residents from leaving home during the testing period. This coming just 10 days after Shanghai formally ended its devastating 2-month lockdown. So far, case numbers appear to be modest, with 11 locally transmitted cases reported this morning for the day Sunday, giving residents hope that, for now, at least, there won't be new large-scale lockdowns ordered, though, as we have seen, there are many areas across the city that are in some form of restriction or lockdown currently. The outbreak in the northern border province of Inner Mongolia, near Mongol, is not as optimistic, however. Yesterday, over 80 new official cases were reported, and the province's worst affected city, Orenhot, Erenhot, bordering Mongolia, has been placed under a strict citywide lockdown. This week, General Secretary Xi Jinping, during an inspection tour of Sichuan, made his expectations of local cadres across the country crystal clear, expressing that the country would, quote, unswervingly adhere to the general policy of dynamic zero COVID, end quote. China Beige Book today tweeted a simple quote from Bloomberg News without commentary, but I think their point is very clear. This is the quote: outbreaks have re-emerged just days after 2 cities eased social curbs that have been in place for months. If you guys are enjoying the content, don't forget to hit the like button, and for anyone who wants to go the extra mile and help keep the channel sustainable, Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee and crypto links are in the description below. Thank you so much everyone for the ongoing support. Next up, the economy, and today we're going to be talking about household savings, debt and assets. Deep insecurity about the state of the economy, as well as other factors which we'll touch on shortly, have driven up Chinese household savings in the first 5 months of this year. According to new data released by the People's Bank of China, China's central bank, in the January through May period of this year, household savings increased by 7.86 trillion yuan, or approximately 1.17 trillion US dollars, about 50.6% more than the increase in the same period last year. There is a bit of a misconception in the West that Chinese households are highly frugal and save a lot. While this was arguably true 20 years ago, and while there are parts of the country, particularly the poorer parts, that are still relatively frugal, Over the last decade, Chinese household debt has expanded at a rapid pace, and by some metrics, the situation is worse than US households. For example, household debt as a percentage of disposable income reached a record high of 130.9% last year. Zhong Zhengsheng, chief economist at Ping An Securities, argues that the increase came as consumer spending weakened because of the closure of shops and other businesses due to lockdowns, as well as uncertainties over employment and the economy generally. This does fit well with the collapse of retail spending we saw back in April, May and June, giving some hope that a reverse in household savings may see a nice bump in retail spending when household confidence returns, hopefully later this year. However, some, like chief macroeconomic analyst at Zhongtai Securities, Chen Xing, argue that the collapse in consumption that we have seen in recent months, though exacerbated by the lockdowns, was actually driven by the slowdown in the growth of household assets. Quote, "The current average growth rate of Chinese household assets has dropped to single digits compared with the period between 2011 and 2019, when the compound annual growth rate was about 13%. It marks an even sharper contrast with the years before 2008, during which Chinese families saw their assets grow at an average annual rate of 20%. End quote. And of course, we know which asset class is driving this slowdown: real estate. And we'll be discussing more on the housing crisis later this week. Now, let's continue with today's video by following developments from the Shangri-La dialogue being held in Shanghai over the weekend. Being held in Singapore over the weekend, not Shanghai. We remember from our latest video that on Friday, Japanese Prime Minister Kishida, delivering a keynote address to open the security summit, pledged to, quote, fundamentally reinforce Japan's defense capabilities within the next 5 years, end quote, and that Japan has adopted a new type of realism and diplomacy for a new era, to use the Prime Minister's words. And of course, we remember the same day that People's Republic of China Minister of Defense Wei Fenghe reportedly bluntly informed the US side in a private sidelines meeting, quote, "If anyone dares to split Taiwan from China, the Chinese army will definitely not hesitate to start a war, no matter the cost," end quote. During a speech on Saturday at the event, US Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin expressed that it was China who had unilaterally attempted to change the status quo when it comes to Taiwan, and that US policy itself had not changed. Quote, "We're seeing growing concern from Beijing. We've witnessed a steady increase in provocative and destabilizing military activity near Taiwan. That includes PLA aircraft flying near Taiwan in record numbers in recent months, and on a nearly daily basis," end quote. Likely in response to Wei Fenghe's bellicose statements over the weekend, it appears that US officials have leaked official concern about Chinese intentions to US media. Over the weekend, multiple US media outlets are reporting that Chinese military officials in recent months have asserted to US counterparts that the Taiwan Strait is not international waters. Now, Beijing has long claimed that the Taiwan Strait is part of its exclusive economic zone, but these new official assertions, if accurate, appear to be a rhetorical escalation. The US and key allies in the region like Japan maintain that the strait constitutes international waters, and a Pentagon spokesperson over the weekend made it clear that the US would continue to operate in these international waters. On Sunday, yesterday, Australia and China's defense ministers met for the first time in 3 years, and coming just weeks after a patrol plane incident in the South China Sea described by Canberra as very dangerous. The Australian side described the Sunday meeting as, quote, an important first step, end quote. Also on Sunday, Mr. Wei Fenghe presented a speech to the delegates of the Shangri-La dialogue event, and the theme had not changed since his reported comments on Friday, repeatedly expressing that China would fight for Taiwan. Quote, "We will fight at all costs, and we will fight to the very end. This is the only choice for China," end quote. In the same speech, the People's Republic of China Defense Minister also praised China's COVID policy as a miracle, saying the country is one of the safest in the world, and that China's success is a, quote, major contribution to the global fight against the pandemic, end quote. Okay, that is today's episode. My apologies again for my voice. Hopefully my throat will recover over the next few days. But that is it for today. I'll see you tomorrow.